What's up, everybody? So this is going to be the Dark Angels Codex for 8th edition Initial Impressions Ramble. I was able to get my hands on the Codex the Wednesday prior to Christmas, so hopefully everybody had a happy holiday, a Merry Christmas, and everything like that. And being that I'm done with the holiday stuff, I thought I'd do this ramble. And I got my hands on the Codex the Wednesday before Christmas, like I mentioned, from a local gaming store I didn't know existed because it's really new. It's only a few months old or so. So that was cool to find out. They didn't have it in stock, but I put an order in with them and I got it that Wednesday. So I got it pretty quick. So read through it, and I want to do a ramble where I go over kind of the Codex layout overall, in terms of, or insofar as talking about how this shows me how 8th edition codices are, because this is my first 8th edition codex. And I did that specifically on purpose because I wanted my experience into the 8th edition codex world to be with a force that I would be building an army with. You know, that I've played Dark Angels throughout many editions, and I feel like the standard 40k gamer would be getting the codex in question for their force, not just picking up a random one that came out first. So that's why I did it that way, to give my impressions on that route, and then I'll talk about the rest of this video on my impressions of the Dark Angel specific stuff for this codex. So firstly, fit finish overall form of the codex as it is for 8th edition is what I expected it to be. Really, 5th into 6th and so on really did show us a layout that they're basically sticking with, which is fluff in the front, image gallery in the middle, rules in the back. And that's the same basic setup here. So not something out of nowhere, not something that I didn't expect, but I just feel like they made it a bit tighter. It almost seems like they've done a good job of hyping up everything in the force. If you read some older codices, even with a force that might be something you like, not all forces, not all unit entry fluff was created equal. Not everything sounded worth trying. You know, I'm a big Tau fan, particularly Farsight Enclave, but I never found the ethereal particularly interesting to take, and the fluff never helped its case. Its entry in the codex never really helped its case either. That's just one example. There's example for myself in the Eldar and everything that I've read codex-wise. And the different editions didn't really stoke any of that fire. Here, it makes things sound more enticing. And if I wasn't somebody who knew how I play and like to play, I would be enticed to try out scouts. And that's a good business thing on their side. To make everything sound enticing, worth trying, means you potentially sell more kits. Not everybody likes that concept, but hey, whatever. My point is this. The force sounds really cool. And you want your force to be hyped up and built up to be the best thing since sliced bread, no matter what it is. And not that any force sounded bad by design from GW Codex in the past, but now I can say with this Codex, with the Dark Angels in mind and having previous Dark Angel experience from Codex-wise, things, almost everything, basically everything, sounds really enticing to try. And I think that's a good job. Outside of that, editing wise and everything, I'm not talking grammar. If you're nitpicking a sentence that might have a word missing or a certain structure of not being perfectly correct, you're missing the point of a codex. And there was really, like, on that front of one or two sentences in the entire reading that I did that really stuck out of me going, that seems a little weird. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't make or break a codex for me at all. What I mean by editing is not that, but how the book plays nice with itself, references itself, how a book flows. There have been different codices in the past for different forces where they reference a certain page number. You go to that page number, has nothing to do with the war gear they're talking about, or nothing to do with the thing that was referencing that page, because whoops, they moved that page and they didn't update the reference. So it says go to page 46, but it really is on page 52 or something like that. That's happened in the past, enough for me to remember it. Words, sentences, structure left out for a particular unit entry, things that make it kind of confusing, need clarification, because it was blatantly left out or just not really proofread well enough. I feel as not gone by the wayside entirely, because we don't know yet. We don't have all the codices yet. I don't know how it is for the older codices of 8th edition that's been out for a bit longer. But in reading this codex and seeing how the pages reference things and all that, it feels a lot better. You reference a page number. Hey, guess what? It's on that page. You look at a Udemy sheet and you go, hey, this has everything it needs, it looks like. I don't feel like it's missing anything, by accident. If it's missing something, it seems intentional by design. And that's a good thing, right? Sure, we want everything to be the best and awesome and crazy good, but not everything's going to be. And as long as it's not missing something because, whoops, we just left that sentence out, I'm fine with it having a miss or whatever, you could say. As long as it's not accidental, but by design. So everything feels a lot better that way. So with that said, I want to finish the rest of this ramble off talking Dark Angel specifics. And one, I got to say, good job on GW's part with this codex, fluff-wise, is doing a much better job stating the mission of the Unforgiven. The whole hunt for the fallen shebang. Overall, they've done a very good job in saying and showing and demonstrating via what their fluff and everything, how it permeates the Unforgiven to its core all throughout. But with that same token, they've also really done a good job of stating, yes, this is their all-consuming quest. However, the bulk of what they do has nothing to do with the Fallen, and I really like that. Because in the past, the codices made it sound like all they do is hunt the Fallen and the Eldar were there by accident and got in their way. No, and we knew that not to be the case. Now the Codex, I think, does a better job of stating, hey, yes, they're always on the lookout for Fallen activity, but they're also doing their job as a Space Marine chapter in the Imperium at large, too. And that's the bulk of what they do, is their job as a Space Marine chapter, and that quest is just something on top of it. Yes, this leads to conflicts of interest and scuffles and redeployments, but it's not every day of the week it's happening, and the particularly bad scuffles and redeployments and abandoning positions is actually pretty rare. Overall, right? We're not talking specific successive chapter lore here necessarily. I do like that. I do like that it does a better job of stating, yes, it's their all-consuming quest, but no, it's not all they do. In fact, it's a very small fraction of what they do. It's just so important that it permeates everything. It feels better that way for me, to be honest. I do like that. What I don't like, in same regards to the Fallen, is how we're just pulling Fallen out of the woodwork. Like, they capture a dozen, but hey, guess what? There's a whole battle company of Fallen over there, and there's a whole thing over, like, in the Great Calamity, in which Ezekiel saw an image, they have it in the fluff, just as a random thing. It stated that Ezekiel saw clearly the exact number of the Fallen, and it was far larger than any of them suspected. And it was like how it's basically the size of the first legion as a legion before being broken up. And I thought that was a little excessive, a little silly, to be honest. Like, all they did was they took a good step in the right direction with the Fallen. They're making progress. It's their all-consuming quest. It's not what they do 24/7. They do most of the stuff is normal routine stuff for Astartes. This is just something that's so important. It permeates everything, is always on their mind. And then they do a big step back by going, oh, by the way, we just spontaneously manifested a whole thousands upon thousands of more Fallen. And it's just like that. It just felt a little odd. I do like, on that same notion of silliness in editions past, such as Belial being the super soldier that he is even before becoming a super soldier, besting all but company masters and champions while as a child neophyte. Setup that was there in the past. It's still set up in a way that you read it and go, wow, he was really good even as a neophyte, but it's a lot more believable now. Stuff regarding Cypher, a lot more believable now when it's even brought up at all in the Codex. It's just, the Codex does a very good job of making things feel more believable. Even with Asmodai, he doesn't feel as crazy as he was depicted in previous editions. They feel like they reined in his fluff in this book a bit, and when you read this book, he sounds very zealous, the point of complete obsession, but it doesn't sound like, oh boy, he's wacky, zany nuts. So I think that overall, for that kind of silly stuff, they did a good job, in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion, of toning it down to where it feels believable now. There's stuff that really felt unbelievably and therefore silly in previous editions of this codex, and other codices as well, I'm sure. You could say it too. I just don't have 8th edition examples of those. And it seems like they went and looked through it and go, okay, this is silly, let's tone it down so it feels more believable, or let's restructure in a way where it feels more believable, and I do appreciate that. I could be mistaken, but I don't recall any example painted models of the successor chapters of the Unforgiven. It's all just the Dark Angels in their range, and I get that. But even if they showed us the same pictures of painted models they showed us since the Guardians of the Covenant and stuff first were shown off, that would have been appreciated. It's always cool to see the successor chapters as actual models. And like I said, I could be mistaken. I did page through and I looked at all the pictures, but when you get accustomed with your eye and your brain, when you're looking at everything, you don't, and he's looking at basically the same examples over and over and over again: green armor, bone armor, black armor, and you're not really deciphering every little minute detail. You could even not register something different on the same page if it's just one model. So I could be mistaken there, but from what I could remember and account for and what I recently looked at, I couldn't see anything. So that's a little unfortunate, but at least there's some artwork of them so you can see what their color scheme is, which is of course important. I'm not going to get into like the whole that, for example, the Angels of Vengeance called their first company the Dreadwing. It's still Deathwing and still Ravenwing companies. They just use the Dreadwing as a name, and they use, I think, Raptor Wing to call their Ravenwing. One of the chapters called both companies their Redwing, and so forth. But it doesn't mean that that's what Dreadwing is. It just happens to be using a name from the Hexagrammaton of their 6 wings they used to have. So I'm not going to go into stuff like that or naming structures that way, or what the Blades of Vengeance and Angel of Defiance, which are Primaris chapters, what it means for them and their structure. I will just state that there is stuff like that, and that'll be probably brought up in other videos and the like in the future. I just don't want to get too bogged down in this initial impressions where I'm already getting bogged down. Overall, though, favorable. I mean, I like this book. What this book did do for me, however, is it took some of the wind out of the sails for my Primaris enjoyment. And I knew that the Primaris weren't going to be as freeform, open-ended as stuff for regular Space Marines. But I think they really were too narrow in their scope. For the Primaris captain to only be able to take the power sword and the bolt rifle and the auto bolt rifle stuff that he can take in that one blister pack, or the other model that can be built with the plasma pistol power fist, but those are the only options he can take, I feel is way too limiting, right? I think it's just like self-defeating limiting almost. And therefore, the only things he can take as a relic of Caliban is going to be the Heavenfall Blade, the robe, or the Bionic Eye thing, which is you only can take one, period. So that's really the only 3 choices you get. Because the way those relics work, it replaces a specific piece of war gear. The mace, for example, replaces a power maul. The only things that can take a power maul, it feels like, are non-Primaris masters. So I just feel like it's too limiting for Primaris completely, and even still, it feels a little stifling in general. Why not let a librarian take that? Or I can see a librarian because it's not a force weapon, fine. But why can't a chaplain take the mace? He's got a Crozius Arcanum. It used to count as a power ball. Now it's got its own entry, so you can't do that little switch up. In fact, the only thing they could take is the robe or the Bionic Eye, it seems like, and that's it. So it just seems like we got a little bit more constricting with this edition than we did in the past, and that is a little unfortunate. I get why they're doing it, but the same notion, it was cool to be a bit more freeform and just keeping it open-ended and letting there be more options for the Primaris captain model and whatnot leads to better, I think, a better enjoyment of the game, because now you can convert up a wicked-looking mace on your Primaris captain's hand or what have you to do that relic, or just to be a power maul or whatever. But you can't. So that is a little unfortunate. Things do feel a little stifling in the Codex option-wise. But at the same token, there's a lot more you can do. You can take a pot that carries. You're not limited to just being a command squad style setup or anything like that. You can take things independent to attach to a certain squad. So that's pretty cool too. And that's not just a Dark Angels thing. That's the 8th edition setup thing. So all in all, though, pretty favorable. makes me wonder what I'm going to do with anything Primaris, if at all, anymore, to be honest, and that's a ramble for a different time. But anyways, takeaway of the 8th edition setup for Codices is as I expected, and I think it's got a pretty good quality to it. And for the Dark Angels is, overall, I like what they've done. So I feel like we're not being obsessively driven by fallen activity and that's it anymore. They've done a little bit better job, I think, with that. More to say, and that specifically, of course, in future videos. Anyway, I rambled on long enough. I've went over my 15-minute mark. I like to kind of keep for myself. But, hey, it happens. I talk too much. But anyways, thanks for sticking through it. There'll be further videos that come for this codex and breaking it down, my thoughts and concepts and the like in the future. So anyways, again, hopefully your holiday season, Christmas, whatever, went well. And until the next one, take it easy.